No one noticed her at first. She stood quietly near the corner of the room, serving tables, avoiding eye contact, doing everything she could to stay invisible. But what no one knew was that this woman understood every single word they were saying, especially him, the billionaire. He laughed. He mocked her accent. He whispered something to his friends, something he never thought she'd understand. And then his mother spoke. Just one sentence. In Italian, the room went silent, because the quiet waitress answered back, fluent, perfect, fearless. And in that moment, the most powerful man in the room realized he had made the biggest mistake of his life. The laughter didn't stop immediately. It lingered, sharp, careless, and loud enough for everyone to hear. The billionaire leaned back in his chair, wine glass in hand, smiling the way people smile when they believe the room belongs to them. He glanced at the quiet woman standing near the table. "Do you always move this slowly?" he said, not even bothering to lower his voice. "Or is today just a special occasion?" A few people chuckled. She froze for half a second, then continued walking, as if she hadn't heard a thing. That only made it worse. "Hey," he added, louder now. "Don't worry, I know this place hires generously." The word hung in the air, heavy, ugly. More laughter followed. His friends leaned in, enjoying the show. The manager stood nearby, pretending not to notice. No one stepped in. No one corrected him. The quiet woman set the glass down carefully. Her hands didn't shake. Her face didn't change. But something inside her tightened. Not anger, control. She had seen this before. Men confusing money with importance, volume with intelligence, humiliation with power. The billionaire smirked again. "You understand me, right?" he asked, tilting his head, mock sincerity in his voice. "Or should I slow it down for you?" This time the room really listened. Every laugh sounded forced now, every smile uncertain. Because for the first time, she looked up, not in fear, not in apology, but with calm, steady eyes. Eyes that made people uncomfortable, because they didn't look defeated. They looked aware. The billionaire noticed it too, and for reasons he couldn't explain, the smile on his face began to fade. Most people thought she was quiet because she had nothing to offer. They were wrong. She had learned to be quiet because speaking had once cost her everything. Every shift felt the same. Long hours, polite smiles, invisible labor. She took orders, cleared plates, and absorbed words that were never meant to reach her ears. But they always did. People spoke freely around her, about money, about power, about lives they didn't respect. They assumed she wouldn't understand. They assumed silence meant ignorance. It never did. When the restaurant was empty, she moved differently, slower, more deliberate. She memorized details most people ignored. The tone of voices, the tension in shoulders, the weight behind certain words. Because survival had taught her something important. Information is power. At home, she lived simply. A small room, second-hand furniture, old books stacked neatly by the window. Books in languages people didn't expect her to know. She studied at night, not because she had to, but because learning reminded her of who she used to be, and who she still was. Back at the restaurant, she avoided mirrors, not out of insecurity, but because reflections carried memories. Memories of classrooms, of expectations, of a life that ended abruptly when circumstances forced her to choose survival over pride. No one there knew her story. They only saw an apron, a quiet walk, a lowered voice, and that was exactly how she wanted it. Until tonight, until the billionaire arrived, because something about his presence felt familiar in the worst way. Not the wealth, but the confidence. the kind that came from never being challenged. She felt it tightening in her chest as she crossed the room, a warning she had learned to trust. This man believed the world existed to reflect his importance, and people like her existed to stay out of the way. She lowered her eyes again, not in submission, but in patience. Because some truths were too powerful to be revealed all at once. At first, it was just a detail, small enough to ignore. But details had a way of exposing truth, especially when someone wasn't meant to notice them. The billionaire was speaking to his guests, bragging casually, the way people do when they expect admiration. He mispronounced a name, a historic landmark, something minor. No one corrected him. They never did. But the quiet woman paused. She hesitated, only for a moment. Then softly, almost to herself, she corrected it. Not loudly, not to embarrass him, just precisely. The conversation stopped, not because she raised her voice, but because she didn't need to. The billionaire turned slowly. His expression wasn't anger yet. It was disbelief. "Did you just correct me?" he asked. Her shoulders remained relaxed, her hands still. "Yes, sir," she replied calmly. "I thought you'd want it accurate." The word accurate landed differently than intended. A few people exchanged glances. The manager stiffened. This wasn't how things worked. Not here. Not for someone like her. The billionaire's smile tightened. "You're here to serve," he said evenly. "Not to participate." She nodded. "I understand." But something had shifted. Because ignorance didn't sound like that. Education did. Confidence did. And now, everyone felt it. He leaned forward, voice sharper now. "Don't speak," he added quietly. "You're making people uncomfortable." She met his eyes, just briefly, then looked away. Not in shame, but in restraint, because the question was no longer whether she belonged here. It was why she chose to stay. The room tried to recover. Glasses clinked. Someone laughed too loudly. The moment was supposed to pass, but the billionaire didn't let it. He leaned back in his chair, studying her now, not as staff, but as a disruption. "You speak well," he said. Too casually. She said nothing. "You don't sound like someone who should be carrying trays." A few guests smiled. Others looked away. He continued. "Where did you learn to talk like that?" "Community college. Online videos." The words were wrapped in humor, but the edge was sharp. Her jaw tightened. "I studied," she replied quietly. "Studied what?" he pressed. "Serving." A ripple of laughter followed. Uncomfortable. Obligatory. This time the manager didn't intervene. He was enjoying it. The billionaire tilted his head. "People like you usually don't end up here by choice," he said. "So tell me, what went wrong?" That was the line. Her fingers loosened from the tray. She inhaled slowly. Every instinct told her to walk away, to leave the room, to leave the job. She took one step back, then stopped, not because she was afraid, but because she remembered something. Her grandmother's voice. "Never explain yourself to someone who enjoys misunderstanding you." She set the tray down carefully. The sound echoed louder than expected. The billionaire watched, curious now. She looked at him, not defiantly, not emotionally, simply, honestly. "I'm here because I choose to be," she said. Silence. The laughter died instantly. He frowned. That wasn't the answer he expected. He stood. "Then choose carefully," he said coldly. "Because this place doesn't reward pride." She nodded once. "I'm not asking for a reward." She turned to leave. Every eye followed her. The question hung in the air. Was she done? Or was this just the beginning? She didn't walk away. That surprised him. Most people did. She stood there, hands relaxed at her side, not clenched, not trembling, waiting. The billionaire straightened his jacket. He expected anger, tears, an outburst, something dramatic. Instead, she spoke softly, not to the room, not to the guests, only to him. "You asked what went wrong," she said. Her voice didn't shake. "I'll tell you." The room leaned in. She met his eyes. "What went wrong is that people confuse position with worth." Silence. No one laughed this time. She continued. "I don't need to raise my voice to prove I exist. I don't need your approval to know who I am." A pause. She let the words sit. Then, one sentence. Just one. Heavy, measured, unavoidable. "I serve here," she said, "but I do not belong beneath anyone." The air changed. You could feel it. The billionaire didn't respond immediately. For the first time since the evening began. He didn't know what to say. She didn't wait for an answer. She gave a small nod. Respectful, final, and turned away, not in defeat, in control, behind her. A woman whispered, "That was powerful." Another guest shifted uncomfortably. The billionaire watched her walk back toward the service hall, noticing things he hadn't before. Her posture, her calm, the way the room seemed smaller without her presence. For the first time that night, he wondered, who exactly did he just underestimate? The room buzzed softly, glasses clinking, low murmurs. A third-party manager, a woman who had quietly been observing, cleared her throat. "Sir," she said, addressing the billionaire, "there's something you should know about her." All eyes shifted. Clara, or Emily, the name on her apron, looked up but said nothing. The billionaire raised an eyebrow. "Go on," he said, the corners of his mouth twitching in amusement. The manager's voice dropped. "Her education. It's extensive, not what you would expect from someone working at a small cafe." Whispers spread. The guests leaned in. "Her past positions," she continued, "included managing high-level projects overseas. She's not wealthy, but she's powerful in her own right." A pause. The silence thickened. The billionaire froze. Something about her made sense now. Her calm in chaos, her ability to stay measured, her quiet strength. He glanced at Clara, the sparkle in her eyes, the faint confidence in her posture. It wasn't arrogance, it wasn't rebellion, it was competence. One of the elite guests whispered, "She's not what we thought." The billionaire's jaw tightened. He had underestimated her. And now the room had too. Clara remained composed. No celebrations, no victory smile, just calm awareness that she had been quietly recognized. The manager concluded, "Sir, she's not just a waitress, she's someone who commands respect, whether you see it or not." A murmur swept through the guests. The billionaire's face betrayed his thought. How did I miss this? For the first time that evening, he did not dominate the conversation. Instead, he watched, he listened, and a seed of curiosity and respect was planted. The room had shifted. Laughter that had echoed just moments ago now hung awkwardly in the air. Guests exchanged glances, whispers spreading like wildfire. "Did you know? She's incredible." The billionaire, Lorenzo Romano, stood frozen, a half-smile faltering on his face. He tried to reclaim the room, but the energy had changed. The walls that once supported his ego now seemed to close in. Clara, or Emily as she preferred, remained quiet. No smirk, no gloating, just calm composure. Her eyes scanned the room, not with triumph, but observation. The manager from earlier gave him a subtle nod. See what happens when power is misread. Whispers turned into soft murmurs of admiration. Even those who had been part of Lorenzo's inner circle paused, uncertain how to react. A guest muttered under their breath, "She's remarkable." Lorenzo's confusion grew. For the first time, he was no longer the center of attention. Instead, he was watching, calculating, realizing he had misjudged her from the start. Clara's silent strength had shifted the balance. No one laughed at her anymore. No one doubted her competence. And in that room, filled with wealth and privilege, respect had quietly replaced ridicule. He wanted to speak, to assert control, to remind everyone of his power. But the moment passed. He could feel the shift. Humility, and maybe even a hint of fear, tinged his usually confident demeanor. And Clara? She simply stood there, poised, waiting, her presence commanding more authority than words ever could. Lorenzo Romano sank into his chair, the weight of the room's judgment pressing down on him. For the first time, the sound of whispers wasn't background noise. It was an accusation. Every glance, every raised eyebrow, every pause in conversation echoed in his mind. He replayed the moments over and over, the way Clara had corrected the minor detail, the calm authority in her voice, the way the entire room had shifted, silently acknowledging her power. "How did I get it so wrong?" he muttered to himself, almost inaudible. A rare chill ran down his spine, not from the air conditioning, but from realization. He had misjudged her from the first second. He tried to justify it. "She's just a waitress. She can't possibly understand." But the words felt hollow, even to him. Every thought collapsed under the undeniable truth. Clara was not ordinary. Not in skill, not in intelligence, and certainly not in dignity. Regret set in, a heaviness in his chest he hadn't felt in years. He remembered the pride, the arrogance, the smug confidence, and how each had crumbled silently before her. He could almost see it, his mistake painted on every face in the room. Not angry faces, not mocking, simply recognition. Recognition of someone who had been underestimated, until now. And in that moment he realized, power is not in money, connections, or titles. Power is subtle. Power is calm. Power is respect earned quietly. One decision at a time. He looked toward her, unsure if he wanted forgiveness, or simply to understand how he had failed. Clara. She hadn't moved. She hadn't gloating. She was composed, a quiet storm of intelligence and resilience. And Lorenzo knew deep down he had awoken something that could never be ignored. The room was no longer silent in contemplation. It buzzed with quiet judgment. Whispers became more pointed. Phones were subtly raised. Messages typed. Social media notifications pinged unseen. Lorenzo Romano felt it immediately. Not the embarrassment of a misstep in private, but the real-world consequences. Board members exchanged looks. Allies who had once nodded at his every word now hesitated, questioning, recalculating. Investors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Even his closest confidants, the ones who had always leaned on his authority, glanced away. Respect is fragile. One careless moment, one underestimation, and it crumbles faster than gold in water. He realized, painfully, that his reputation, carefully built over decades, was no longer untouchable. Business partners reconsidered deals. Competitors smelled weakness. A subtle tremor ran through his empire, unseen by most, but lethal in its potential. And all because he had misjudged a quiet woman who spoke softly, acted calmly, and held the room in a grip stronger than his own arrogance. Even the media wouldn't be kind. Headlines were already forming in his mind. Billionaire humiliated by waitress, power shift in the making. Untouchable no more, Lorenzo Romano's moment of weakness. He had thought influence and money could shield him. But now power had another definition: integrity, respect, and quiet authority. And he had lost it. In seconds, the restaurant was emptying. Whispers still lingered, like smoke refusing to dissipate. Lorenzo Romano moved toward her, a mix of frustration and humility in his stride. He cleared his throat, voice carefully measured. I didn't mean for any of this to happen," he started, a rare vulnerability creeping in. "Let me explain. Please just hear me out." She didn't respond immediately. Clara's posture was perfect, calm, still. Her eyes, steady and discerning, studied him like a hawk circling a prey. He offered a handshake, a business card, a temporary role at his company, even a small incentive to repair the shattered reputation he had left in the wake of his arrogance. "I want to make this right," he said, almost pleading. And she listened. Not a nod, not a smile. Silence. But in that silence was the weight of choice. Her quiet authority filled the space between them. Lorenzo realized something terrifying. He could no longer control her reaction or the story. Every second she didn't speak made the tension stretch longer. Every beat of her calm breathing reinforced the power shift. Inside her mind, she weighed options. Could she forgive him? Could she take the opportunity and still remain true to herself? Or would this be yet another trap of arrogance, dressed as apology? The answer would decide the next chapter of both their lives. The private room felt smaller than it was. Lorenzo's offer hung in the air like thick fog, tempting, yet heavy with expectation. Clara met his gaze. No anger, no trace of revenge. Just calm, measured strength. "I appreciate the offer," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of dignity. "But this is not about power. It never was." His eyes widened slightly. Surprise, confusion. He had expected her to plead, bargain, maybe even manipulate him in return. Instead, she simply walked away. Each step echoed quietly but decisively across the polished marble floor. The whisper of her heels was louder than any shout, louder than his protests or attempts to sway her. In that moment, it became clear. Power does not always lie in wealth. True strength lies in self-respect. Choosing yourself over temptation is a victory no money can buy. Lorenzo stood frozen, realizing that no amount of wealth, apology, or influence could pull her back. The room, once filled with expectation, felt empty, as if the world had tilted slightly off its axis. Outside, the city lights blurred through the windows, rain still tapping rhythmically against the glass. Clara didn't look back. She didn't need to. Her decision, quiet but monumental, spoke louder than words. She controlled her story now. The city skyline stretched beyond the window, lights twinkling through the rain-slicked streets. Inside the softly lit apartment, Clara sat alone at the table, a cup of warm tea steaming in her hands. No celebrations, no fanfare, no revenge. She let out a slow, steady breath. Everything that had tried to define her, wealth, status, fear, humiliation, no longer mattered. She had survived the storm, not by fighting fire with fire, but by staying true to herself. Her phone buzzed. A message from Lorenzo. "I understand now. You were always more than I realized." She smiled faintly, not with pride, but with peace. Clara looked around her small, modest apartment. Every object, every corner spoke of her choices, her resilience, her quiet power. No one here doubted who she was. She didn't need anyone's approval. She glanced at the old photograph of her grandmother on the shelf, a woman who had whispered in her childhood, "Power isn't in raising your voice, Clara. It's in knowing when not to." She had finally understood that lesson completely. And in that understanding, she felt an unparalleled freedom. If you loved Clara's quiet strength and want to see more thrilling stories that keep you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to Hidden Fate Stories, where every twist will leave you wanting more.